Hey guys, welcome back to our tutorial series with Cubase, our basic series for you to get started. I got my Cubase already loaded up and I'm again in the session we had the last time. If you remember, we did some changes to our configuration, including our device configuration for our audio interface and some global changes we made, and also we had a look at our project settings, and yeah, we set that up so far. Now what we're looking at today is basically the area around here where you can add tracks, remove tracks, duplicate tracks, whatever you want to do with tracks, and on the other hand the area around here, which is your timeline. So since our session is yet pretty empty, I think it's time to start throwing a couple of tracks into it, and you do so by right-clicking this area over here, and there you can select whatever track you want to add to your session. So let's divide this a little. We got the audio track and the instrument tracks, which are the ones that I'm gonna be talking about first. Then I want to take a little look at some kind of special tracks, as I call them. This is the folder track, the marker, and the ruler track, because these are not really tracks containing audio or any MIDI information. These are just for organizing your project and helping you out. So, and the last part I'm gonna be talking about are the FX channel and the group channel tracks, because these still are a little different than the other tracks we had before. So, as I mentioned, to get started, we want to add an audio track, for example. So we right click this area and say add audio track. So now we can set the number of tracks we want to have. In this case, I just enter 4. And we can change the configuration of our tracks, whether we want to be at mono or stereo audio tracks. So I think you're pretty sure already what the difference between mono and stereo is. If not, maybe just check our website. We're explaining this over there in detail. So in this example, we are gonna take our audio tracks as tracks for recordings of microphones, of single microphones, not any stereo kind of microphone. So we just stick with the mono tracks and say add tracks. So now you can see we got our 4 audio tracks added here in our session view. You can enlarge these or make them smaller back again by just grabbing the lower edge of these, or if you wanna apply to all of these, you just shift and select them all. So the sizing feature works for all of these tracks, which can come in handy, for example, if you're recording on your first track, for example, and you want to see what's going on actually on this track. You can just enlarge it and you will get a beautiful view onto the waveform of whatever you're recording. So let's have a look to the left side of this. This is the so-called inspector, and we're not talking too much about this. This will be a different chapter, because this is basically all your track settings, like your mixer settings, including the inserts and the equalizer. So we're not talking about this now. But what you want to have a look on is the input and output configuration, which is right here. So since we have a mono track, and you might remember I got a 2-in interface, I'm asked which input I want to be using for this track as the input to be recorded. So left would be the right one for me, since this is the one where my microphone is already going through. Let's have a look back at our tracks. So the first thing you want to do is basically rename these, for one simple reason. Well, now you can see in your arrangement, in your session, what's going on, and you have an idea of what actually track this is. So, for example, if you know I'm recording my vocals on this track, and you can tell by the waveform that this is your vocal track, that's no big of a deal. But whenever you're working with the mixer, which you can open up pressing the F3 button, yeah, basically the only information you got on which track you're working with is your name. And in this case, this is audio 1, 2, 3, and 4. You might be able to deal with this when you got only a couple of tracks, but as soon as your projects are getting larger, you want to make sure you rename them properly. So actually, let's just rename these. Let's say this is going to be a project where I'll be recording like my guitar 1 and my guitar 2, and on the third track I'll be recording my vocal 1, and the second one is gonna be my backing vocal. Yeah, So let's talk a little about audio tracks. The only thing an audio track can contain is actual audio information, so like a WAV file or a part of a WAV file or whatever. So for example, on an audio track you can have your own recording or maybe a loop or a clip you've got from somewhere else and just threw it into your session. So for example, I'm gonna take my vocal one track, and you see as soon as I select the track, the red record enable button switches. So actually the track I'm selecting is the one that is gonna be recorded as soon as I hit the record button. For example, I'm gonna be doing this right now. So, and you see whatever I'm talking now is being recorded. So when I enlarge the track, you can actually see the waveform, which is pretty nice. Same thing goes, for example, for my guitar track. So when I grab my guitar and hit a chord, and when I'm gonna be recording this, it actually gonna be showing up the waveform of the guitar chord I'm playing. So you see, these are just audio files, nothing else. There's no other information included, like for example MIDI or whatever. So now you can start moving your audio clips or regions, as they're called, around and start to size them or cut them or whatever you want. We'll be talking about these tools you got there for editing your files or your regions by next episode, when we're going through all of your controls right in the top bar here. So I think for now we're just leaving this the way it was. We're just gonna size it down a little and head on to our next track type. So this is actually gonna be our instrument track. And our instrument track is working a lot different than our audio track, because basically it does not contain any audio information. It's a kind of MIDI track where you can actually set an output for your MIDI data directly into a VST instrument. So in this case, I'm gonna go with the Halion Sonic SE, which is a little sample player and which comes with every version of Cubase. So let's just throw in this one. And now, as you see, he's been throwing this track right under the last track I've been selecting. So I've selected the vocal track and he just opened a new track right under this one. So you can now just grab these and move them around. So basically, let's talk a little about what an instrument or a MIDI track is. So as I said, you cannot record any audio information into this one. You can record any MIDI information, and all MIDI information you're providing is going through, again, like you had on the audio track, the input-output configuration. So what is set by default is all MIDI inputs. This will record any MIDI information you give to your computer by having, for example, a keyboard or any other controller connected. You select your instrument track and have a record enabled and press the record button. You will see there will a region be coming up, and this one will record any button or any key will be hitting on your keyboard. So in my case, the region just disappeared because there was no information transferred, basically because, as I mentioned, I don't have a keyboard hooked up to this. So let's just pretend we had some information in this. We can draw them in basically by pressing down the Option key. So basically now you can just grab your clip again and move it around like you can do on the audio tracks, and you can use all of these tools, which will be explained in the next episode. These basically work as well for the audio regions as for the MIDI regions as well. So you see, these are basically being handled the same way. The only difference is exactly that you actually have audio information in these and only MIDI information in these. So as you can see, we've been talking about the input and output configuration for these tracks. For the audio tracks, where I set my left in for my input and I left the output for the stereo out, which will be good for just now. And this is going to be a little different on your instrument track, because basically you do not have any audio information being sent to a channel on your mixer or your master channel or whatever. You just want to send the MIDI information this channel contains to an instrument. And this basically is where you can select which instrument you want to be triggered with your MIDI information. So we selected the Halion, and this is just good for now. If you want to change the instrument, you can just do it right here. Yeah, I know my computer is pretty slow right now. And for example, if you open it up again, it will show you the little interface that the instrument is coming with. Or you can just toggle the view of the instrument by clicking this little button right here. Well, just to show you, we add a MIDI track right here, which is basically being handled the same way like an instrument track. As you can see, the dialog doesn't even ask us to select the plugin for the instrument to be. Actually, the only difference right now, as you can see, you cannot select any plugin directly by clicking onto the output. You can just select any port, any MIDI port, whether this might be a virtual or a physical port on any of your interfaces. So basically, I'm not thinking that this is too important for you, so I think we can just remove the track by performing a right click and say remove selected tracks. Next thing I'm going to be talking about is little kind of different, because these are tracks that are basically made for organizing your project and not actually containing any audio or MIDI information. So what I want to be starting with is the let's call it the folder track. So a folder basically is yeah, just like, you know, folders from your Finder or your Explorer. You can just create one of these, grab a couple of other tracks, just select them and move them right into this folder. So this is pretty cool. It helps you getting your stuff organized, because you can expand or collapse them however you want. And your global controls like mute and solo works for all of the tracks which are in this particular folder. This also works for the record enable. For example, if you get a folder like drum set and you'll be recording a drum set with like 12 or 14 microphones and you don't want to set any channel to record enabled by hand, you can just go and click the button on the folder and he will apply this to all of your tracks that you got in there. Same goes for the monitoring as well. So yeah, let's just collapse this one for now and add another kind of track, which is actually the ruler track. So now this is why this episode is titled Track Types and Timeline, because basically the timeline is the line at the top here where you can see where you're in the project actually. This one is set to bars and beats. If you remember the last episode where we have been through our project settings or a project setup, how it is called, you can change the way this is displayed right here at the display format. Or bars and beats, that's the one that we've been selecting lately, just fine for us. So now when we add a ruler track, we're just doing basically a copy of this, which is basically letting us change the way we want to have it displayed. So for example, if we go for seconds right here and move the ruler right to the top, so we have both kind of displays right here. So on the top bar there is still our bars and beats, and right below this there's our seconds or minutes. This comes in handy, for example, if you're working on a track and you're not exactly sure how long your track is already because you've been working with the bars and beats grid all the time. You can just add a ruler track, set it to seconds, and so you just got a second indicator of where you're moving in the project. So another thing I like to do is using the ruler basically as a kind of separator. So for example, if I got all my audio tracks right here and then there comes a bunch of instrument tracks and I don't have these separated with folders, so I just grab my ruler and move it here, and so I got some kind of visual indicator where my audio tracks are located and where my instrument tracks start. So you can add as many of these as you want, and this might help you out keeping your project a little bit more organized. So next kind of track I'll be talking about is the marker track. So a marker track basically allows you to set markers and label these as you want. For example, let's just increase this a little so we have access to the buttons which enable us to set markers. For example, if you zoom in right here and say add a marker, so you can see this one is labeled 1. Or if you add another one, this is obviously labeled number 2. If you're moving before the first marker and add another one, this is gonna be labeled number 3, because they are not appearing in the order that follows your timeline. Basically, this is just ordered the way that you set your markers. So these are just single markers. You can grab them and move them around like you can do with your regions. So now there is another kind of marker, which actually is a marker that marks up a range, and you can set these markers by using your locators. Your locators, actually these little triangles, mark up a range of your project, which is pretty global. So by global I mean if you got this range selected, for example, and you say loop playback and play it back, this is actually the loop range that's gonna be repeated over and over again. Also, if you now are about to export your project or mix down your project as an audio file, you will just be mixing down or bouncing, however you want to call it, what is in the range of your locators. So if you get your range, for example, set at default, which is an area of 0, and you say I want to export this project, it will not let you to, because he will ask you to set your locators to the right position. So in this case we are using the locators for our range markers, and you can either set a range by dragging these, or you can just use your keyboard, use a shortcut for this. For example, if you hit the Option button on your keyboard and click somewhere into this top ruler, you will have your left locator set, and whenever you hit the Command or Control button, you will have your right locator set. So pretty quick and easy way. And now we can set our marker. So this one is labeled number 1 as well, so actually you can see Cubase handles these kind of markers totally different from each other. Now, if you want to give your markers your custom labels, you can just hit the Command or Control M button, and there will be a dialog popping up which shows you a list of all the markers you have selected, and whenever you want to label something, you go to the description tab and can just add whatever we want. Yeah, I think that's it for our organizing kind of tracks. I think these will help you out a lot, so I think the best would be to just mess around a little and see how you want to work with these and how they can help you. So before we continue to our last couple of tracks we want to add, we maybe just clear up the mess we just made. I'm just selecting everything I created so far, press Command A and hit the delete button. This will help me get rid of all the stuff I did. So let me organize this just a little. So I have my ruler track on top and my marker track sized down a little. So we keep the folder and we keep the tracks we just did, and we should start at a group channel track for this now. So the group and FX tracks are totally different once again from all our other tracks, basically because they do not contain their own regions or audio data in the first place. They're more just like looping through any audio you send to them. So let's just create this group channel track. We just make up one and keep the configuration to stereo. Yeah, so now what this does, basically it's creating a channel for us which is called group 1, and as the name is telling already, these kind of tracks are made for grouping audio information. For example, let's call this one guitar group. And now what we can do is, if we're heading back to our guitar tracks, where we'll have a look at the input-output configuration. So we just had a look at the input and we ignored the output in the first place. We set this to stereo output and this was just fine. But now, since we want to group all of our guitar tracks to our own subgroup, we just click on this and say groups guitar group. So you can send as many tracks as you want into a group. You just should have a look for the metering and that the track actually isn't clipping. So now we had both our guitar tracks now going into this guitar group. So, and if we open up our mixer, our guitar group appears right here. And now whatever audio information or signal we got going through these channels are going through this channel in the first place before hitting the master fader. So this is a good thing, for example, if you're working on a project with a couple of guitar tracks, couple of vocal tracks, couple of other tracks, and you want to have these grouped, for example, so you can just set the main volume for all guitar tracks by using this fader, or if you have other groups, using the other faders for the particular channel. So another good thing is that you actually can use effects on this, so any audio that is on either this guitar track or this guitar track will be affected by the effect that you're adding on the group channel as well. So pretty quick and easy way. For example, if you got a full band and just want to hear all of the guitars, you can just go ahead and solo this group. So let's close a mixer. So just for example, now add another group channel track, again stereo configuration, and rename this to vocals or vocals, however you want. Now you go to your vocal track and say output configuration goes to groups and goes to vocals. Same for the other track here. And you can continue this and make up another track. For example, if you got a couple of virtual instruments or instrument tracks overall in this, you can just group them by using more of these group channels. So the last thing that we're looking at now is the FX channel track. which technically is pretty much the same as a group channel. So the difference is that we can choose an effect right here. For now, I think we just go with a reverb, and we pick the Cubase Roomworks SE for this, and we say add track. So as you can see, the plugin already popped up here on our screen, so we don't mind the configuration for now. We just know this one is running, and we can use it right now. So we just close this window and see what's happening down here. As you can see, there has a folder been created, pretty much the same way as for group tracks. But in this now we got all our FX channels. And again, you can see you have no way to record, enable or monitor this track. The only way is pretty much like at the group tracks, that you get audio into this by sending it from other channels. So let's go to our guitar track. Basically what we want to do right now is applying this reverb effect to all of the tracks to give it a kind of a room. So we do not go to the input-output configuration, since we want to have our guitars grouped together to our group channel. So we go to our sends, and send basically enables you to select the channel that you want to send your audio to. In this case, this is the Roomworks SE. So you can just enable this by pressing this power button, and with this slider you set the amount, or to be more precise, you're setting the level of the actual track that you're sending into your FX channel. So you actually have 4 slots for send effects in this version of Cubase. If you decide to buy the larger one, you have at least 8, and you can apply this to any channel you want. For example, let's go for our guitar 2 and say we want to send this to the Roomworks as well. We could do this for our vocal tracks right now, but we just leave it like this. We open up our mixer, we will see this track has been created, our Roomworks SE. And whenever we play back any of the signals going through these tracks, we will see they're actually going through the guitar group in the first place, but also are being sent to our effects channel. So one last thing for our effect. Basically, when we open it up, whenever you're working with these effects channels, you want to make sure your mix value of your plugin is exactly 100%. Yeah, I think we're done talking about tracks and different track types. So in the next episode, probably what we're gonna be doing is we're going through all of these little thingies, little buttons, our transport controls. We're gonna be explaining some of these tools that you actually want to be using, and some other things you can just set up right here. So I think that's it for this episode. If you want to have any more information, you might want to head to our website and browse for content, browse for categories, browse for any topics that you might be interested in, and yeah, hope to see you in the next episode.